Coming up on the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, Yvonne and I will get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis on how it impacts you. Plus, we are joined today by Al Muratsuchi, Assembly member from District 66. He's going to talk about what's happening at the state capitol right now involving public education and everything you need to know as we move through this legislative session.
The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now.
And it's a few minutes after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. I'm Naj Alikhan, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Iván Carrillo, ACSA's Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations, with us today. Also the star of the Behind the Bills podcast, which we will talk about a little bit later on. There you go, full graphic. If you're not subscribed to this, you can get on Apple and Spotify. It's fantastic. I listened to it at the gym today. Yvonne, so proud that we have this new podcast. It's great. Go ahead. What's your 20-second elevator pitch on this podcast?
This is in direct response to what we've heard from our members, wanting to continue to get more frequent insight into what's taking place here in the policy and political realm. So just really excited about the opportunity to use a different communication channel. I have the scars on my back from going through the process, so to speak, because it's been fun to work on with you and Michael and the rest of the team. But I really hope it's something that our members find value in. I am finding this to be just a really fun experience, and hope it's something our folks enjoy listening to. So please subscribe, check it out.
Yes, please subscribe, because you've had some political experts on in episodes 2 and 3. You had me on in the first episode, and you haven't invited me back, which tells me probably a little bit more about my performance than yours.
Hey, well, it's been a while since you've invited me back into this concept. So.
Look, admittedly, it's been a while since we've been here. Yvonne and I traveling all over the place. We were at the board retreat. Edgar on assignment today. He is in San Diego, meeting with our members there. So lots of traveling. Yvonne, once again, I got to witness one of the best cornhole players that you will ever see. Yvonne, once again, coming down to the wire on that ACSA board retreat cornhole game. Again, Al Muratsuchi is going to join us in just a couple of minutes, talk a little bit about the legislative session, what's going on right now, and what those of you in public education need to know about. And Yvonne, this gives us an opportunity. The legislative session is back. It's a smaller session right now. Tell us a little bit about this session and what kind of goes into making all of this work.
Yeah, this legislative session, this is the last year of a 2-year session, and now we're in the final 4 weeks. Everything is going to be a sprint from this moment forward. So the amount of committee hearings, the amount of changes to bills, there will certainly be new ideas and language that is introduced that folks have to react to in a really expedited time frame. So 4 weeks the legislature has to get their remaining bills to the state governor for his consideration for signature. But it's wild. It's fun. It's exhilarating. But it's drinking through a fire hydrant, to say the least, here in these last weeks of session.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what our guest has to say about what it's like on the floor during such a short session. You talked about a lot of legislation. Let me ask you, because there are some little tweaks that happen here during this final few weeks with bills that you've previously heard. Those little tweaks, I know that you've been in a meeting with a couple of other education organizations, but you guys have to take a real deep dive into some of those tweaks, because they really could be very nuanced and very deep into the written material, correct?
Honestly, we hope that they're little tweaks, but oftentimes they're really significant changes. So yeah, we have to react very quickly and understand the nuances and intricacies of all the different policy proposed changes that are being put forth. And we don't have, again, the luxury of time to sit with things, to be able to go back with our committees and councils in the same manner that we would in under normal circumstances when bills are introduced earlier in the process. So yeah, it's a very changed environment to say the least these last 4 weeks of session. But we're hoping for things that are small changes and little changes that would be ideal on our end. But every end of session brings surprises, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's this one piece of legislation that I'll just bring up because it's a good segue to our guest, because we've heard so many times over the years that in California, decisions that are made here in California have this trickle down effect. The further east you go, there's this piece of legislation right now, Assembly Bill 2316, the California School Food Safety Act from Jesse Gabriel of Encino. This legislation would prohibit 6 synthetic food dyes from foods being offered by schools, whether breakfast or lunch or something like that. The legislation relies on research that shows these food dyes can cause several disorders. This legislation would be the first of its kind in the U.S. and go into effect December 31st of 2027. So again, we talk about how legislation here in California can make a difference nationwide, and this might be that exact kind of legislation. Ivan, let's go ahead and bring in our guest. We don't want to keep him waiting. He's so gracious to join us here on Muratsuchi is the Assembly member from District 66, the chair of Assembly Budget Committee Subcommittee on Education Funding, also the 2023 ACSA Friend of Education Award winner. Assembly member, so good to have you here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. You're now here for the second time. Just so you know, when you get to the fifth time, you get business cards made from ACSA as a frequent member. So just keep that on your radar. The more you come, the more you get from ACSA with these business cards.
Naj, I just want one of those cool football helmets that you have behind you.
Well, look, as soon as Yvonne signs off on it, trust me, it's not a problem. Let me ask you about public education. Why has public education been a top priority for you over the course of your career?
Well, thank you, Naj. Thank you, Yvonne, for having me on your show. And I really appreciate, this is my 10th year in the legislature, and, one of the most special recognitions that I received in my 10 years was the Friend of Education Award from ACSA, because, I know that ACSA, you are all the leaders, the captains of your ships, the principals, the superintendents, all of the administrators that are running your schools, running your programs, running your districts. And so to have that acknowledgement from ACSA means a lot to me. I'm a true believer in education like all of you. I am a living product of the power of education to change lives. I'm the son of immigrants, a first-generation college graduate, and a kid that was born and raised on U.S. military bases in a tiny island of Okinawa out in the Pacific. And, what is a kid from Okinawa chairing the Assembly Education Committee for the state of California? It's because of the power of public education. I'm a product of public schools, graduate of our great universities of California. And that's why, and now I'm a proud parent of a public high school student, a former Torrance School Board member. And ever since I first arrived in the legislature, I've always made public education my top priority.
Assemblymember, yeah, appreciate you being on with us. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and be in dialogue with you. So yeah, thank you for just being such an ally to ACSA and to a champion for public education, and so responsive to the concerns that our members bring to you into your office. As mentioned, there's a lot still that's lives out there. It's my understanding there are more than 1,000 bills that are still alive and could potentially move to the governor's desk. What do you see as the biggest remaining issues, and where will your attention be prioritized here in these final weeks?
Yeah, well, I know for most normal people, 1,000 new, potential new laws is a scary thought for a lot of Californians. But we have a lot of work to do, like you said, in the last 4 weeks of the session. Um, so much of our time was consumed closing passing the budget. Also, I was very happy that we were able to get my bill, Assembly Bill 247, signed into law, which is now Proposition 2, the statewide school bond that I know ACSA was a big supporter of, trying to get matching dollars to every school district in the state of California, regardless of where you live, where your community is. Want to get those matching dollars to make sure that our kids, are we're fixing those dilapidated and unsafe conditions that exist at too many of our schools, as well as making sure that we are providing 21st century classrooms that provide 21st century technology and other resources necessary to support our kids. So that's going to be one of my top priorities is to make sure that California voters support and pass Proposition 2, and would really appreciate all of ACSA's support as we move forward with this bond campaign. Beyond that, some of the big bills that are still out there. I have a bunch of education bills that are still pending, but one of my top priorities is to try to get kindergarten mandatory for all kids. We know that over 90% of kindergarten eligible kids are already attending kindergarten, but too many kids, especially in African American and Latino communities, that's where we're seeing the roots of the opportunity and career achievement gap. Where a lot of the learning differences, especially in reading ability, that we're seeing, starting in the preschool years. And so, as I want to make sure that we continue to prioritize, our ongoing efforts to not only achieve universal transitional kindergarten, to make sure that every kid that wants to attend, a TK program in one of our public schools, but also to make sure that every eligible kid attends kindergarten and continue to build, with all of the early education stages. We want to continue to build upon the historic investments we've made in quality early education.
I have to say, since my wife is a kindergarten teacher, she is very happy to hear about mandatory kindergarten. So thank you for pushing that. We do have a couple of people who've asked specifically about the state bond, and I know you mentioned it. So let me just follow up on that. How does Proposition 2 compare to the last effort that went to the voters in 2020? And what can districts do to support this school bond and help ensure that it passes in November?
Yeah, thank you. So as all of you probably know better than most Californians, the last time we passed a statewide school bond was way back in 2016. And ever since then, we have already committed and expended the remaining bond funds from the last 2016 statewide bond that we passed. And so we're long overdue. Of course, we tried in 2020 with the ill-fated, ill-numbered Proposition 13, not to be confused with 1978's Proposition 13, but 2020, when we tried to pass a statewide school bond in 2020, that was Proposition 13, a $15 billion bond measure that, among other things, had some, tax issues that only added to the image problem of being labeled Proposition 13. And so that, was one of the rare defeats for a statewide school bond in this deep blue state of California. Proposition 2 this year has been scaled down from $15 billion in 2020 to this year $10 billion, with $8.5 billion going toward K-12 and $1.5 billion going to community colleges. Nothing for the University of California and the California State University, although that breaks my heart as a proud UC graduate. There were a lot of hard decisions made in terms of how do we really tighten this bond proposal to increase the chances of this measure being supported and passed by California voters. So we reduced the overall size of the bond measure. We also took out a very controversial provision that was in Proposition 13 that would have increased the local bonding capacities for school districts. That was one of the main targets of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association that in part led to the defeat of that measure. And so that has been taken out. There are great things to benefit everyone in Proposition 2 that were not in the 2020 measure. Supplemental grants for transitional kindergarten facilities, supplemental grants to address either energy efficiency or extreme heat conditions. Some people are calling it school greening projects. Supplemental grants for career technical education. And so those are some of the highlights of a lot of good stuff in Proposition 2.
Yeah, I want to ask you a follow-up, sir, because we had a guest on back in late June that was talking about the school bond. And her opinion was the statewide school bond wasn't going to have any impact on local districts that were running their own school bond. And I just wanted to get your feedback. Do you think that maybe having multiple, some local and a state one, run into each other? Is that going to be problematic in some communities?
No, I don't know who was your guest, but I mean the beauty of this proposal is that we're basically doubling the benefit for local schools, local communities, in terms of any local bond measures that they are either putting on the same November 2024 ballot or are contemplating for upcoming years. But the beauty of the statewide school bond is that we're going to provide matching dollars for the local bond dollars that are passed by through local bond measures, local bond proposals. So up to 55% matching dollars, state matching dollars for every local bond dollar, or up to 65% for any new construction dollars to match the local dollars. So double the money, if not more, for the local investments to fix our schools.
Assemblyman, I remember a time when the last night of session on the Assembly and Senate floor, the physical clock that was in the floor, in the chambers, would be stopped at 11:59 because the midnight was the deadline by when bills could be passed and sent to the governor. And it would remain 11:59 for hours. So there would be continued deliberations on remaining bills that were out there. That's just one example of just kind of the sometimes shenanigans or surprises or funny things or interesting things, maybe is a better way of describing them that happened during this last month of session. Any stories or experiences you've had that you would describe as interesting?
Yeah, well, anytime you get 120 politicians together in the same building, working under deadlines to pass bonds or to pass bills, there's no shortage of wild and crazy stories. I mean, I don't want to name any names, but Yvonne, I'm sure you're my all-time favorite. Although it wasn't an end of session, it was dealing with the budget deadlines. But it's not exactly a profile in courage, but there are a lot of tough bills that come up when deadlines approach, and I know that during the Great Recession there was one of the excruciatingly painful budget bills that had to be passed during the Great Recession, with all the budget cuts for our schools and so forth. And so, a lot of times legislators they want to duck those difficult votes, and they might try to go into hiding. A lot of people may not know, but the leadership of the Assembly and the Senate, they actually order the security to shut down the facilities so that no legislator can escape any difficult vote. And so there was one desperate legislator who was so trying to avoid casting this politically unpopular vote to cut budgets for schools for their local communities, that he apparently, this was before I joined the legislature, but he stood on the toilets, the toilet, closed the toilet stall door, and was trying to avoid the getting caught by the security. That's got to be one of my all-time favorites.
That sounds like one of those great 1980s movies where the guy is trying to avoid taking the test or get caught from taking the test, so he's standing on the toilet in the men's room just to make sure that he doesn't get caught. That's fantastic. I love to hear that.
Another great example of all the important things that we learn in public education.
There you go. All right, a loaded question for you here. Next year is going to be your last in the Assembly due to term limits. What comes next for you? What do you see on the horizon? What's going on in your future?
Well, thank you. I actually the next 2-year term is going to be my last term. So I'll have 2 more years. Hopefully, I need to get reelected first this November. But I've really enjoyed my time here in the legislature. I've really appreciated the opportunity to, like I tell everyone, I get paid to go to work every day to try to make the world a better place, and especially my work in public education. I'm hoping I'm exploring a run for state superintendent of public instruction to continue to champion public education, to continue to fight to make sure that every child, regardless of where they live, can attend and receive an excellent public education. And so that's something that I'm exploring.
All right. Well, Yvonne, what that makes me think is that we will be able to get him up to at least 5 appearances should he make it into that position, and obviously get reelected, because the number is 5, Assemblyman. The number is 5. Don't
with the ACSA helmet, yeah.
We'll make it happen.
Assemblyman, now that you've put that out there, you don't be surprised. You're gonna get a lot of pushes and nudges from school leaders out there.
Absolutely. Al Muratsuchi, 66th Assembly District, the chair of Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Education Funding, and our 2023 ACSA Friend of Education. Assemblymember, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Naj. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thanks, Assemblyman.
Good to see everyone.
Okay, and folks, we've got a lot to tell you about, so don't leave for a moment, because we've in our absence over the month of July, we've launched a lot of things that we want to let you know about. First, as we talked about, Yvonne is the star of Behind the Bills. That is our brand new governmental relations and advocacy focused podcast. You can get that on Apple and on Spotify. We've had 3 episodes. Episode 2 and 3 were really good because I wasn't there with him. Yvonne does a great job on that podcast, so definitely subscribe on Apple and Spotify. We also want to tell you about our brand new ACSA Leadership Classroom. You can see right there, Michael Kelly, our executive producer for this show, and I had Vivek Ranadive, who's a tech entrepreneur and a professional basketball team owner, on the very first episode of the ACSA Leadership Classroom. On this podcast, which is also available on Apple and Spotify, you'll hear from leaders outside of the world of public education who talk about what they learned along the way, educators that influence them, those things that they look for in people they come across, that they say, hey, that I identified that individual as a potential leader. Again, Vivek is our first guest on the Leadership Classroom. We've got another great one coming up for you later this month. We'll tell you about that coming up on our show next week. But again, you can get that on Apple and Spotify as well. If you like, folks, what you see here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to subscribe to us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, and subscribe to us on Instagram. When you do, you will get instant alerts when we are coming on for breaking news. And of course, you will also get an instant update when we're going to come on for our normal Wednesday show. Again, subscribe, like, follow, whatever you got to do. The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, definitely come and be part of our family here. Also, if you've got great stories happening in your school district, we want to tell those stories as well. Go ahead and send your photos, your talking points, your news releases to our EdCal editor, Michelle Carl, at mcarl@axa.org. Whew, man. Yvonne, that was just a lot of promotion right there. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to wrap this up. Anything in particular that the assemblyman said that sticks out to you as we head into the final weeks of this legislative session, other than the guy standing on the toilet to avoid having to put in that controversial vote?
Yeah, I almost called you out because I feel like you did that one time when we had a cabinet meeting and we couldn't find you.
It kept me awake during the cabinet meeting. That was the only thing that worked.
No, I mean, one thing in terms of what the assemblyman said that I would echo and pick up on is just how important Proposition 2, the school facilities bond is for our public schools. So please look at and ways that you and your school districts can amplify within your local communities the need for it. Tell your stories. What are those facility needs that you have? We have also information that we're going to be pushing out, and so keep an eye out for that. There's template letters that you can utilize to join the campaign also. But yeah, Proposition 2, we need to get this passed in November.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, thank you so much for joining us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Remember, we are live and interactive Wednesdays here on ACSA Facebook and ACSA YouTube. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.